Hello, this is Nick Van Buren. I'm coming to you now with the trailer for the hottest sci-fi action film of the year, Dune.
My planet Arrakis is so beautiful when the sun is low.
Sand. I hate sand.
Rolling over the sands, you can see spice in the air.
Spicy sand.
The outsiders ravage our lands in front of our eyes. Their cruelty to my people is all I've known. What's to become of our world?
There's Timothy.
A boy.
Hey, Duncan, can I trust you with something?
Yes, always. You know that.
Jason.
I've been having dreams about a girl on Arrakis. I don't know what it means.
Dreams make good stories. But everything important happens when we're awake. Hey, you. Put on some muscle?
I did?
No.
We are House Atreides. There is no call we do not answer. There is no faith that we betray.
Roland.
Smile, Gurney.
I am smiling.
The Emperor asks us to bring peace to Arrakis. House Atreides accepts!
I know you. There's something awakening in my mind.
You need to face your fears.
Come with me.
I've been like holding my breath this whole time.
You've never met Harkonnens before. They're not human, they're brutal.
The Duke's son sees too much.
This is why Dune killed them all.
Varys-like character.
God in heaven.
Death Star?
Get everything
with guns
off the ground! Go!
This is an extermination. They're picking my family off one by one.
Let's fight like demons.
Dad, what if I'm not the future of House Atreides?
There's the
doesn't
worm.
seek to lead. He's called to it. But if your answer is no, you'll still be the only thing I ever needed you to be. My son.
You become like a worm.
Will you protect Paul?
With my life.
Only together can we stand a chance.
It's time.
Look at that list. Amazing. Wow. Okay. You know, they didn't really need to sell me on this that hard with Denis Villeneuve directing it, and I've loved pretty much everything he's ever done. But it's been some time since Dune has felt relevant in the cultural zeitgeist. So essentially releasing a brand new IP to the world, a big sci-fi epic, this looks pretty darn good, right? You've got the all-star cast. You've got some of the biggest badasses currently in Hollywood. This looks big. It looks grand. It looks like it is going to kick the crap out of anything else coming out in the fall. I'm so here for it. I'm excited. Let's get to the analysis. All right, here we are. The long-awaited readaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune novel is coming out October 22nd after several delays, mostly due to certain events last year, which is sort of fitting for this film. This film has a little bit of a reputation about it. Some might even call it cursed, much like the story of the many failed adaptations of Don Quixote. For those not in the know, Here's a little overview. The novel was released in 1965 by author Frank Herbert. It wins a Hugo Award the following year. In 1971, Appjack Productions was the first company to secure the rights for an adaptation of Dune. They hired on Charles Jarrett, who was semi-well-known at the time for recently making a film with Richard Burton, but alas, after some time in pre-production, the project got cancelled after the head of the production company died unexpectedly at 51. In 1975, the rights were acquired by a French company who hired on a acid western art house filmmaker, Alejandro Jodorowsky. Jodorowsky planned out this epic, massive, 10-hour feature film and would spend over 3 years in pre-production. Jodorowsky chose his son for the lead, Paul, now played by Timothée Chalamet, but also secured this incredible cast of David Carradine, Mick Jagger, Orson Welles, Gloria Swanson, Geraldine Chaplin, and Salvador Dali, who allegedly only agreed to do the film with a payment of $100,000 an hour. So, of course, they planned to do all of his shots in under an hour. They were apparently reading out the description of his scene to him, and Dali was like, there should be... I don't actually know what Salvador Dali sounds like. Yes, of course. Representing it. And he looked over at them and said, there needs to be a flaming giraffe. A giraffe on fire. And of course everyone's like, yes, of course, whatever you want, that's brilliant. They did later invite him to leave the production, not because of how much money he was asking for, but because he made some pro-Franco statements. You know, one of the popular fascists of his day. Author of the novel, Frank Herbert, was kept in the dark throughout most of the process of this pre-production, and when he finally came all the way over to Europe to talk to Jodorowsky, he found out that not only was it slated to be a 10-hour film, which he was unaware of, but the screenplay that Jodorowsky wrote would have ended up in a 14-hour film. So of course, the funds dried up. Because... and the project was abandoned after 3 years. Sadly, the head of special effects for this film, Dan O'Bannon, suffered a mental breakdown, understandably, after the collapse of this film after 3 years of hard work. He ended up getting admitted to a psych ward. After receiving treatment, he decided to change his career and become a writer, and in 4 years he wrote 13 screenplays, the last of which would become Alien. Funny enough, in 1979, Ridley Scott was hired on to make his own attempt at an adaptation of Dune. He even hired on O'Bannon after working with him on Alien. Ridley Scott reached out to Frank Herbert, trying to win back some goodwill from the author, and commissioned Herbert to write his own screenplay for the film. Unfortunately, even after the recent lessons learned, Herbert's version of the screenplay turned out way too long, and they had to pare it down quite a bit. It was then that Ridley Scott had the idea to split this film up to become a two-parter feature film, something we're very accustomed to today. But after 7 months of production, Ridley Scott dropped out, realizing that there was at least 2.5 more years of pre-production, and he just didn't think he could handle the stress at the time after losing his brother to cancer. Ridley Scott dropped this project and moved on to a project that he was a little bit more invested in, and that project was Blade Runner. In 1984, David Lynch...
You are witnessing a front three-quarter view of two adults sharing a tender moment.
Yes, that David Lynch. Yes, that David Lynch. Okay, we get the point. Directed the first completed adaptation of Dune, now almost 20 years after the book's release. The critics were mixed on it. Some called it incomprehensible to those who haven't read the book, and others called it out for having too many liberties to make fans happy. Herbert himself was positive about it. Sort of. Quote, "You're gonna come out knowing you've seen Dune." Fast forward to the year 2000 with a sci-fi original miniseries directed by John Harrison, who got his start as the first AD for George Romero's Day of the Dead. And is fairly well received. Harrison came back in 2004 to direct a sequel miniseries based on Children of Dune, the third book in the series. Or maybe it's the 10th book. Or maybe it's the 28th book? I don't know, you guys. Dune chronology is weird. In 2008, Peter Berg of Friday Night Lights was hired on by Paramount to direct a new adaptation of Dune. Berg had pitched it at the time, saying that the theme of finite ecological resources was topical in 2008. They even hired on Frank Herbert and Brian Herbert, his son, who by this point was making his own books within the Dune universe. But in 2009, Peter Berg decided to drop the project, citing that it just wasn't the right fit for him. Paramount also dropped the script that Frank and Brian had been working on, and Paramount set off on a new quest to try and find a director who could make this movie for under $175 million. For perspective, here are some films that are made over $175 million. Who Paramount would land on is Pierre Morel, known for one film, Taken. Paramount commissioned a new screenplay to accommodate Morel's vision of the film, but after another year, Pierre Morel dropped out too. And in 2011, Paramount dropped all plans to make a Dune film. Which leads us to November of 2016, when Legendary Entertainment, known recently for the new Godzilla series and Detective Pikachu, acquired the rights for the Dune adaptation and hired on Denis Villeneuve, who in 2018 talked about a two-part adaptation of the book 56 years after it was first released. Now, personally, I am a huge fan of Denis Villeneuve. I think he's positioned himself perfectly as one of the top sci-fi filmmakers of recent years. His previous project, the equally ambitious, equally massive film Blade Runner 2049, released in 2017, had similarly insane fan expectations, is a plot-heavy psychological thriller with tons of moving parts in a beloved sci-fi world that is alien and yet familiar. It's the obvious choice, really. Before Blade Runner, Villeneuve had started gathering a following after his films Arrival in 2016 and Sicario in 2015. But I also really recommend checking out his films Enemy from 2013, where Jake Gyllenhaal sees another Jake Gyllenhaal on TV and has a little bit of an existential crisis himself, and Prisoners, also from 2013, which is a movie that I truly recommend if you want to wreck yourself emotionally for a day or two. The production team seems to be stacked with typical Paramount producers. Amazingly, it seems that all three of them worked on Detective Pikachu together. Now, I don't know what to do with that information, but I did want to share. John Harrison of the 2000 and 2004 miniseries is also back as an EP, which lets us know that perhaps they're looking back at previous iterations of the film and seeing what worked and what didn't. And of course, you saw the trailer. You saw the incredible cast that is in this film. We've got Rebecca Ferguson from Mission Impossible, Fallout, and Rogue Nation. Zendaya, the former Disney starlet, now turned into a rocket of a career with the new Spider-Man movies, in which it seems everyone on the internet wants to ship her with Tom Holland. Timothée Chalamet of Call Me By Your Name, Lady Bird, and also this excellent sketch collaboration with Pete Davidson.
Check it.
Jason Momoa, who is Aquaman. David Dastmalchian, who has crafted just a wonderful persona of being that creepy guy in a lot of movies. Oscar Isaac from Ex Machina, the Star Wars sequels, and Inside Llewyn Davis. Josh Brolin, recently playing Thanos in the Avengers, but also from No Country for Old Men and Villeneuve's previous movie Sicario. Dave Bautista, formerly of WWE, then Guardians of the Galaxy, and previously Villeneuve's own Blade Runner 2049. Stellan Skarsgård of Good Will Hunting, Avengers, and some might know him from Mamma Mia.
Those crazy years, that was the time of the flower power.
And Javier Bardem from No Country for Old Men, Skyfall, and Mother! It's got the exclamation point. Joining Villeneuve in the writer's room is John Spites, who worked on Doctor Strange and Prometheus, and Eric Roth of The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, A Star is Born, and Forrest Gump. I imagine it must be a very interesting dynamic in the writer's room, since Roth has been writing since 1970, but he's never written a sci-fi film. With the three of them, let's hope that their script is more coherent than previous attempts. Hans Zimmer is signed on again with Villeneuve after his incredible score with Blade Runner 2049. I think Zimmer might become Villeneuve's go-to composer after the tragic death of Johan Johansson in 2018, who had previously collaborated with Villeneuve on many of his films before. Lastly, Greg Fraser has been brought on as director of photography. Fraser has recently been known for his work on The Mandalorian and also Rogue One. Clearly, Villeneuve wanted a guy with an eye for flashy sci-fi with maybe a little bit of grit. That, and unfortunately, you just can't always rely on 72-year-old Roger Deakins to do everything. Now, let's get back to the trailer itself. Compared to the last trailer, this one is a dense, intense dump of plot and world building. Enough to let you know some of the major relationships between characters and the major forces at play. There's also some nice moments of levity that show some nuanced dialogue that we might not have guessed with all the pure masculine fight fest going on for the rest of the trailer. The title is, of course, Dune, though they could have very easily fit a subtitle on this as it is part 1 of 2. Remember Harry Potter or Hunger Games. If this film alone is successful enough to launch a whole new franchise of films, I wouldn't be surprised if they gave it the Star Wars treatment and gave it a subtitle years down the line. The cinematography, in my opinion, is a great mix between artistic sci-fi and grit. I can really see a lot of the style mirroring the DP's work on Rogue One, while also pulling from some of Villeneuve's previous films, such as Arrival and Blade Runner. The only thing shot-wise I'm a little bit disappointed in are the close combat fight scenes. In the first trailer, we only got to glimpse a few, but they looked pretty solid. In this one, there are a few moments, such as the Jason Momoa flying kick and the long-shot CGI-filled battle scene that just felt a little bit Attack of the Clones for my taste. For the narrative, I think this trailer focuses smartly on the relationship between Zendaya's character and Timothée Chalamet's character, Paul. For the record, I know absolutely nothing about Dune outside of these two trailers and the production hell that it's been in for the last 50 years, but I can gather enough through these two trailers to get a little bit of a glimpse of what's going on. From this trailer, we learn that Zendaya's people are native to this planet of Arrakis, and that they are being persecuted by the bald, pale folk represented by Dave Bautista. We find out that Zendaya is somehow connected to Paul, who is part of House Atreides. Now, I'm not sure if House Atreides has an alliance with Zendaya's people, or if there's some ulterior motive for the nobles to be defending them. My guess is that it has something to do with spice. In fact, that's pretty much stated outright in the previous trailer.
My father rules an entire planet.
He's losing it.
He's getting a richer one.
He'll lose that one too.
Oh, and Paul has second thoughts on ascending to the throne of House Atreides from his father, Oscar Isaac. And that's about it for the narrative from this trailer. You can infer some of the relationships and tension, but nothing spoils too much. I truly have no idea what's going on with the blue eyes other than the something awakened in my mind. Does it give you special fighting powers? Can you control the sandworms? Are they just high on spice? Is it space meth? What is the nasal cannula for? The music is fairly par in the course for Hans Zimmer. Big strings, It builds the momentum fairly well, and I do like the layering of the soloist building up to the raw belt at the title card. I'm not necessarily complaining about the music in this trailer, but after the excellent use of Pink Floyd in the previous trailer,
One day, the legend will be born.
this trailer felt a little bit more straightforward for a sci-fi, focusing on giving you plot information rather than the raw feeling of the last trailer. Which leads us to pacing. The two larger sequences we get are closer to being scenes from the movie itself. We are introduced to House Atreides, and Paul is having some mental conflict. We are then given a little bit about the Harkonists, the Harkins men, Harkonnen, who at least right now seem like the big bad, two-dimensional, evil space people. I think they're human.
They're not human, they're brutal.
Okay, I guess not. This is the point where things got to get a little dense and a little bit vague for my taste. That is until they stop the plot altogether and just start blowing stuff up. Which itself leads to the dramatic moment between Oscar Isaac and Timothée Chalamet, which feels like the end of the trailer, and there's more. For about 40 more seconds, longer than it needs to. I have yet to see a trailer that needed to be over 3 minutes. Feel free to comment below if you can think of an example. The hype factor is how much this trailer has hyped me, personally, up for the movie in question. I think it does well at reminding us about this film coming out this fall, since we haven't seen a trailer in 10 months. After all, October is, only 2 months away. It did a great job highlighting the all-star cast, and I have a better idea of the plot than the last trailer gave me. However, I just didn't really need it before I saw the film. The last trailer left me with some questions, but also more raw emotion that this trailer doesn't really capture. I'm encouraged by the dialogue, which actually sounds like human characters and not just sci-fi archetypes. But some of the messy elements of this trailer leave me a little worried that we could be dealing with some of the same concerns that David Lynch had 37 years ago. While I love Villeneuve's Blade Runner 2049, it is quite dense and plot-heavy, and a bit better on a rewatch than it is the first time around. Hopefully cutting this story in two should help. And last but not least, it's our final topic, popcorn ability. Or how well the trailer did for the clicks, the views, the algorithm, and yes, even the fans. Like I said, I think it did a good job reminding us about the film and generating some excitement. I get that they wanted to do something more plot-heavy than the last trailer, but I do think they fell into the trap that many trailers fall into by pushing past a natural climax to get past the 3-minute mark. Because they paid for their 3 minutes of airtime, and they're gonna use up every second of it. This trailer already had plenty of fight sequences and tender moments before the "my son" line with the giant worm in the background. There didn't really need to be 40 more seconds for a CGI battle sequence that we don't have the context for. Why is Timothy taking off his helmet? Does he see a giant worm? Why doesn't anybody else see it? It just seems like he's taking off his visor to see the camera to show off his new blue eyes. All in all, I'm very excited for this film, but I do think this trailer overstayed its welcome. I give this trailer 3 bottles of extra spicy sauce out of 5. What did you think of this trailer? What should I review next? Go ahead and write that down in the comments below. If you haven't already, please click the like and subscribe button. We could really use your support to get through the rough and tumble early months of having a channel. Your support means the world to us, so if you liked it, share it with friends. And if you hated it, share it with your enemies. This is Nick Van Buren, and you've been watching the trailer review for Space Hamlet.